and welcome to Can or Not, a podcast where we think and talk about issues we face as Christians and if we can handle them or not. I'm your host, Xian, and today we'll have Shan and Uncle Keong to talk about this question. Can you lower your expectations? Spouse Material Edition. So, some self-introduction for context for our viewers first. So, Shan can introduce yourself. What's your age range, status, and are you looking for a partner, or in case of, I think, Uncle Wakiong for your kids? So, Yishan, start first.
Hi, my name is Shan. I am 21 this year and I am single. In terms of whether I'm looking for a partner, not really, just kind of going with the flow and seeing where things go. So yeah, not really like desperate or anything, but just going with the flow.
Okay. Uncle Wakiong.
Okay. Hi, I'm Keong. I'm 64 years old. I've got 3 grown-up children. And I guess they are in a kind of, they're in the 20s age, kind of mid to late 20s. In fact, my oldest is touched 30 this year. They are not kind of actively looking, but they are kind of like a little bit like Yishan, I guess, going with the flow. If someone comes along, then yeah. If not, then carry on.
Okay.
But my youngest one has a boyfriend.
Okay. Do you think you want to be involved? Like, I know some parents are like actively asking people and looking for, oh, is your son available? Is your daughter available? And help, quote unquote, pair up the kids. Are you that type of parent?
Not actively, but certainly you take an interest in seeing them as they grow up. That if they were to find a suitable partner, then why not, lah?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, think the basic question is this: for Yishan, for a marriage partner or spouse material, do you have any non-negotiables?
Yeah, I have. Actually,
Okay.
the non-negotiables initially started out as a very long list, like a laundry list of all my wishes and dreams, but over the years I've kind of cut it down because I realized that it's just not feasible and not possible for somebody to basically have every single quality that I wish they would have. Also because I don't think that I can also fulfill that same wish list that I have for someone else lah. So it's not fair for me to expect someone else to.
So what have you? So have you narrowed it down to?
Yep. So I've narrowed it down to like 5 non-negotiables. First one, obviously, being a practicing Christian. I think just being a Christian isn't sufficient for me. I think I would like my other half to be someone who is serious about their faith and who, lives their faith daily rather than just going to church on Sundays or like special times of the year. Secondly, would be someone who is not a bum. I can't stand someone who's just sat in front of the TV, watching TV the whole day, or like couch potato and not doing anything. And that includes not having a job lah. I that one I don't think I can actually click with that kind of person. Thirdly, third and fourth is probably like similar. Like I would not want my spouse to be someone who does drugs or smokes. Yeah. So, and the last one is obviously someone who has a drive and ambition lah, like a goal in life lah. Not. I mean, I don't mean to have like this really fancy grand goal or something like earn $1 million by the time you're 30 or something like that. No, I mean not that kind of thing, but just something that you work towards, and it would be even better if like both of us can work toward that lah. Yeah. So those are my 5 non-negotiables.
Right. Wait, well, I'll ask you about the first one more, but I'll come back to it later. What does it mean to be a Christian? So I want to
Okay.
go to Uncle Wai Keong first and then ask him about his past. When he was in his marriageable age, did he have, whether subconscious or not, did he have any certain expectations for the wife he was going to marry? So yeah, Uncle Wai Keong, what have you
Okay.
have you reflected on it?
Wow. What a question. Yeah, the first thing is my younger days. I wasn't a Christian to start off with. I think that's a different point that I started. And I actually went out with quite a few people before I met Auntie Pauline. So I found that I learned in my earlier relationships some of the things that I should be looking for myself. And I found that, in fact, I found out more about myself than I actually found out about the other person. So when you were young, you are very kind of romantic and very idealistic, just like Shan says, you got all these wonderful things. But you end up hurting yourself, and you start to create an image that you impose on someone else, and then you find that they are not quite what you imagine them to be. So ends up, I got very hurt from there. So out of all this, I've learned about the one thing about myself is that I have this love, and if the right person comes along, I think I can share that love. So that was when Auntie Pauline came along.
Yeah. But I want to don't let you get away. What does it mean? What's your right person? Takkan your right person is like not defined, right? What's
Yeah.
your
It feels right. It feels right.
Yeah. So actually, I found that all these conditions about whether that person has a career or not, these are very superficial things. Actually, they're not important. I realized that, for myself. So the most important thing I think is number one, you need to connect, if you understand what I'm saying. Two people, you can hit it off or you can't hit it off. And I think that is very fundamental. In fact, it overrides everything else. And in doing so, there is also from there. Then there's a lot of the other portions of your character that fits each other. We are, in fact, Auntie Pauline and I, we are completely opposite. I am, she's not. She is, I'm not. But the incredible thing is that is what makes us compatible. So the compatibility aspect is actually very, very strong, I find. And I think it's also how, in terms of the complementary characteristics, you don't force it. It just comes natural. When two people get along with each other, you're comfortable with each other. You connect. You complement. And then in the thick of things, there's a conciliatory spirit, and then there's also your character that you compensate for each other. I think those are the fundamentals for me to build a good relationship, and therefore for me the rest of the things are really kind of academic in that sense.
You throw a lot of big words of C that starts with C.
See,
Character, what complementary,
yeah.
compatible.
Compatibility.
Yeah, I thought like the last time the 3C that I hear my parents talk about is credit card,
Don't get to credit card.
condominium. That's right, and cash, right?
Yeah. No, not quite. I think at the end of it, it's about the heart of that person. You. If you look at all the other things are all kind of adornments, from my experience, And those things can actually give way and change over the course of time,
Okay.
and people changes, everyone changes. But if you're able to hold on to each other in that sense, then you're prepared to journey with each other for the rest of your life. Just as
Oh, okay. So what I hear from the last statement, right? The person you do have a non-negotiable is that the person must be able to stick with you because nowadays, people are already ready to leave relationship at the drop of any conflict.
yeah,
So
not people have to, people want to. Different thing. I want to carry on. It have to means I'm forced to. Like die also must carry on with you. It's not that way, but it's more like I'm committed to the relationship. I want to commit myself to the relationship to make it work, and you too, or as the opposite person. So when you have the two persons committed in that sense, things will work out.
okay.
Instead of having I have to stick with you, die is must stick with you. That leads to a lot of horrible relationships, I think.
Well, I think no commitment also. Well, you say have if they both want to, but that's not. Yeah, that's a debatable question. Commitment. If it's I want to, but don't what you want change as well.
Yeah, that is where your complementing each other comes in, I guess. Because one of the things about your journey in life is that you need to travel that journey together. I think a lot of couples they don't. After they've gotten married, one does one thing and one does the other, and then gradually they find that they actually do separate lives. But it is important to be mindful that you want to journey together, lah. I mean, a very very classic example is like for instance, one works and one stays at home. The one who works continue with the personal development in terms of the career, this and that. The one who stays at home stops doing that, and he or she then actually focuses more on the family and on the social side. And if you're not careful, that there's a separation, because of the circumstances of your lives. So it is important that when you journey, whether one works or one doesn't, you must take that step together and grow together. So if you do that, then there is always what do you call it? There's less of a separation. You will walk with each other, in other words. So no one gets left behind, and the other person is also developing at the same stride as you are.
Okay. So that was your pre-Christian outlook. But now post-Christian life and post-marriage life, now that your kids are also adults, do you now have a different perspective about marriage non-negotiables?
Not really, in a sense that as I come to know Christ, in fact, it's even more. The challenge has actually gone up.
Add-ons.
Add-ons. Then you have to have the fruit of the Spirit. You've got to be patient. You've got to be kind. You are judged. You can't even look at another woman because that's a sin. Wow, that's a tall order. And in many ways, it is. From my perspective, I've always kind of like been a little bit of a lovey-dovey person, but really Christ brings it to a completely different level. It's like between a human level and a godly level. That unconditional love is really amazing, and you apply that to your family after you become a Christian, and then you begin to realize that a lot of the standards and the expectations that you have for someone to meet your bar becomes completely thrown out the window.
Wait. you're saying there's a really high bar, then but
Mm.
are you saying we're supposed to throw that out?
No. There are two bars. There's God's bar and there's your bar,
Okay.
right? So like Ishan says, most of us will say, hey, must be graduate lah, this lah, that lah, whatever your conditions are. But you begin to realize when you come to know Christ, actually, those are not even in God's standards. Those are your standards.
I feel so superficial now. Thanks, Uncle Keong.
No, Ishan, I'm just sharing that experience. No.
Yeah, yep.
But you know what I mean? Because sometimes when we do that, you see, as parents, it's very difficult because I migrated from the point where I was a child, now I'm a parent, and then I remembered how that transition is, and then you begin to start to realize actually those things that you impose on other people is your own bar, right? And when you start to set your own bar, you set your own preconditions. And is it God's condition or is it your condition, right? And if it becomes your condition, it becomes a spec. I was saying to Kaizen, and when it becomes a spec, actually it is your own idolatry, meaning that I expect this to be like this, like that, then you are looking for something which is not the image of God, is in our own image, So because of that, I avoid going into that direction, So even for my children, I don't. So I because I'm very conscious of the fact that it is God bar that I need to subscribe to, So once I start to get an understanding of that, then all these things doesn't be, whether he holds a college degree lah, whatever lah, it really doesn't matter.
So what do you think God's bar for a spouse is? What are tips? Or maybe Yishan can try. I mean, Yishan,
Yeah.
what do you think? What do you think God's or the biblical clues we have for a marriage spouse? What do you think the conditions are?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost one is obviously you must be a believer lah. The spouse must be a believer.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have identified that and you are sure that that person really does believe, then I think everything else naturally would come. For example, when I say everything else, I mean, like serving in church, taking time to study God's word, read God's word, seeing how that person is, in their walk with God, whether they live a life that is pleasing to God, whether how is their prayer life like with God, how do they treat others around them. I guess if someone is really truly a follower of Christ, as Uncle Wakil said also, all these fruits of the Spirit will be present in their lives and in the things that they say and do. And then I think, for sure then that, okay, this person is legit lah. In that sense lah. Right. So yeah, I mean, I know, like, as a kid growing up in church lah, I have been to countless boy-girl relationship workshop, conference, whatever, all those kind of things, and they just keep like saying the same thing over and over and over and over. But I truly believe in order not to complicate things, and especially not to complicate things for yourself, when you are at a certain age or when you're at a particular age, everyone starts asking you, when are you getting married, or why you have no boyfriend or girlfriend, or why you still single, at that particular age in life. I think for me personally, like, I would just choose to fix my eyes on God lah, and the person whom God intends for me to marry, if he does intend for me to marry at all, should reflect all those things lah. So in the first place, whether or not he is truly a believer lah. And I think you can see that from the way he lives his life. He or she, how from the way he or she lives their life, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, but I think that's where it gets complicated because you say, okay, must be a believer. I think everyone agrees, not everyone, or I think most people would agree with that, lah. But whether a person comes in and say, oh, yeah, I'm a Christian, then you think, okay, enough, there's evidence enough. Then you try to look for evidence in their life, but everyone have different standards because, like, let's say, me as a Christian, I have tendencies to invest more time in biblical studies because that's where my interest lies in. But let's say being empathic and serving the poor is not what I am automatically gifted at. Maybe it's because I grew up in a very spoiled environment. I don't know. It's just not my tendency to think about people around me. Are they doing okay? Making sure they are well and ask them how they are. It's not natural to me, but I have a natural tendency. So that's why, like, then when I measure people, I tend to go towards the biblical side first. So I think that's where it's a bit complicated. You name quite a few lists. I don't think you also mean they must fulfill all of them, but those all are just a checklist. Doesn't mean you have to tick all, but let's say some of it, maybe 70% this one, 60% in the other one, but average up is decent score, right? That is that what you mean, right?
No, I think it's more of like principles for you to discern whether or not this person is someone that you would want to pursue something further with lah. Right. I mean, yeah, granted, nobody can be perfect and fulfill everything and just fulfill it just nicely, right? Just like that. So like you said, you may be interested in other stuff, I may be interested in other things. But that's also not a bad thing, right? Like we could both complement each other, and perhaps I may learn to take an interest in things that doesn't interest me before I met you. Because maybe me doing those things with you suddenly just probably, like sparks an interest in me and vice versa. And perhaps that could be God's way of refining us both as Christians individually before we even start anything, like just as friends, right? So I may not care so much about other people or the environment, and you may care about the environment very much, and then you ajak me to go and like clean up the park, for example, pick rubbish or something. And I go because maybe I enjoy spending time with you, and then through that activity or what, then I maybe somehow learn to cultivate a deeper appreciation for taking care of the earth, for example. I don't know, like, so it's really like principles to me lah, like how I use it as a guide to discern whether this person is somebody that I would like to take a step further with lah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that Uncle Wakyong heard that, you say you won't. I don't think you won't be. You won't. I don't think you want to judge, but I'm pretty sure you do look for signs on whether, let's say, your potential daughter-in-law or son-in-law has certain Christian qualities, right? We talk about whether you actually intervene or not, but let's say, would you advise them? You see them, oh, this one didn't call me uncle, come in, and then after that, they didn't offer to wash the dishes when they come over for dinner, didn't greet me when I come in the door, are these stuff like, it will affect you? I feel like it will.
Yeah, I think these are practical matters. And there's one very important thing to also discern is that as parents of grown-up children, we cannot impose our views lah. We can advise them lah, and we have to respect that our grown-up children are adults, so they will have to make their own decisions. So from that point of view, you give advice lah. Sometimes they may not want your advice. so you've got to really treat your children as your friend. So hey, look, I'm just sharing, and this is up to you. You have to see lah. So if you can carry on that conversation, then I think that's how parents should be lah. You don't impose your views. you can share your views, and you have to let your children understand your views in that respect. But just coming back to that, when you talk about spouses being Christian, and I've shared this, that really the sharing of faith alone, I don't think is sufficient. Just like what Shan said, because I think being a Christian alone doesn't necessarily make you a good spouse, right? And we know that, you can see that there are Christians, many Christians who are having problems within their own marriages. So you'll be asking, hey, how come as Christians, as followers of Christ, we are facing that sort of problems as well, just like a non-Christian in a sense. So the things that Shan mentioned, I think are very, very important. That fruit of the Spirit. And a lot of these things are actually in the Bible. If you're following Christ, then your spouse should love you just as God loves you, and vice versa. For instance, and it's unconditional, and He always puts you first. Not put myself first, put you first. Can you do that? So sometimes we have to judge on both sides. It's not just your spouse and constantly saying you. It's not you. It's you and me. Right? And these are some things which are things to look out for, and I said, loving someone is being able to say I love you when you're at the heat of your arguments. It's very difficult to say I love you to someone who is really looking you in the eye with hatred. So in order to overcome that, then really you are drawing from God's love. Can you do that? Right? Many of us struggle. You can't even bring yourself anywhere close, and you still call yourself a Christian, because we all struggle. That bar is very high, and like for example, I've always talked to Auntie Pauline and says that actually in our relationships, it is about managing a day at a time. Every day is a new day, and every day you must look at it as a beginning of an experience for that day. So certain things that we do is like, I say to her, every day you've got to say I love you at least one time. And then if never ever go to bed with a grudge, because you will quarrel, for sure you'll quarrel. But when you go to bed, you have to make up. That's tough. Okay, so if you go through life and you know that, and you practice that one day at a time, you get better at it. You're never good at it, but you're better at it. But when you look at the course of your relationship, you are actually following what God says is to forgive. Never take a grudge to bed. And when you can do that, the following day you both wake up feeling much better. So you will never let your bad times get the better of you. And if you can do that, then your relationship grows. So these are some of the kind of not do's and don'ts, but the little pointers that over and above being a follower of Christ, that the practical practice of it now comes in, and that is where the challenge is. So if you can find someone to share that, then wow, it's a great start.
Yeah, I think the hard part is how do you identify someone who's able to do that? I think you brought up an important point on that. It's we started this off a topic of expectation of others, but I think like you mentioned, it's more important that you yourself I wouldn't say meet those expectations as well, but I think like I know there's a joke in internet, there's a joke about Proverbs 31. Is it the one about the perfect women, that Solomon wrote about? So then the joke is, the guys are looking, where's my Proverbs 31 woman, the perfect woman? But they say, why don't you actually work on yourself to be the man that the Proverbs 31 woman deserve to have, like work on yourself, then maybe she'll come to you, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. You keep on looking that way. You forgot to look back.
Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah, Yishan, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I probably only see one side of the coin, right? Because I haven't gone through marriage or anything just yet. Like,
This comes for many years, Yishan.
Yeah.
I probably won't be able to give a very wholesome picture of it, lah. But I mean, I agree what you say. I mean, I can see that in my friends as well. Like, I mean, as they grow older, obviously they get a little bit more nitpicky about things. They probably I would say fight, but just more of like sort of tutor each other a little bit more, and then
Sorry,
sometimes.
breaking up. I couldn't hear.
Oh,
Sorry, can you hear me now?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. No, so I was just saying that, I can, what Uncle Wakan was describing, I can see that in my parents also lah. In the sense that, after how many years of marriage, right? Like, as they get older and everything, and they start to be a little bit more sensitive or nitpicky with each other, but they still don't go to bed upset. They still resolve their conflicts before they go to sleep, and they wake up the next day as if everything's all good, that nothing ever happened the night before. So I think it's a very good example for the children lah, to see that this is how it's supposed to be like, right? Like, even though you could be really really upset, but it's always a give and take, and each party has to humble themselves to say sorry and to admit that they were wrong, even if it's not their fault in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah, so I learned that from my mom and dad lah. I can see it clearly in their marriage lah. So for me, I think I carry that lesson with me lah, into my future marriage lah. Yeah. So
Yeah. That's cute. I think like you can also put that as a requirement, when you're dating and
Yeah,
dating. Do they actually start practicing that and saying sorry at the end of the day?
yeah.
they will
Yeah.
scare away the guy.
Is it?
No.
No? Yeah. Or maybe if you scare him away, then maybe he's not the one lah.
Right. Yeah lah. So this is the trick question.
No, it's actually a test of the love, right? If someone really loves you, he or she will do that for you.
Both sides though, it's not one. I've
Both
seen
sides are-
parties. I've seen one parties where one is forced to say sorry all the time.
Yeah. No, it's both. It's both.
Okay.
But you see, I think one thing that Yishan brought up, which is very important, is as parents, when you practice that, your children sees it, and actually your children are learning from what you practice. And that's a message to a lot of parents, because sometimes you are not conscious of your own actions impacting the children. So if you are not actually being forgiving to your spouse, and it happens in front of your children, they will internalize it. They will learn it. And over the course of time, when they grow up, it influences the way that they see things. So I think this also comes back to parenting, not just talking about looking for spouses, because your parenting influences how your children will behave in the future. You
So
know?
that's a message to all those with young kids. Your
With kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, good point, good point. Yes, even if our listeners who don't have anyone around them who are looking for marriage, or if their kids are still too young, oh no, it starts now. Starts
Mm.
in your marriage. Okay, so I think we've covered quite a bit. We covered the standard non-negotiables, being a believer, and we talked about how some of the signs and criteria, not exactly criteria, but signs to look out for to see whether the person is actually Christian or not. And we learned that working on yourself rather than keep wanting certain things out of other person only without working yourself, plus parents who young parents or whichever parents that you, it's still not too late, and you can start working on marriage if you want to influence the way your kids view how they view marriage. So yeah, no, thanks Uncle Waikyong and thanks Yisan for coming into this podcast. And thank you all listeners for listening to A Can or Not, a podcast where we think and talk about issues we face as Christians and if we can handle them or not.